President Donald Trump just speaking to the American Legion in Reno, Nevada, moments ago. A very unifying speech, a speech that is very appropriate at a time like this as we increasingly look at a nation divided, a nation that is falling victim to identity politics, with the left saying there are white supremacists in the White House, with members of the left saying if you vote for a Republican, you are a racist, and now with many members of the left calling for all kinds of statues to come down, including New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, who's considering the removal of a 76-year-old statue of Columbus, Christopher Columbus, right there in Columbus Circle, as it is named, on New York City's Upper West Side. This comes as statues and monuments, of course, all over the country are in danger of being labeled offensive and removed altogether, destroyed. You know, one lefty reporter out there is even suggesting we blow up Mount Rushmore. At what point does it stop? At what point does it end? Presidential historian Doug Wead joins me right now. And I got to tell you, Doug, you know what? I'd never thought, never even, you know, I grew up in the North in New Hampshire. I never really thought about the Confederate statues up until, gosh, a few days ago. I question why it is that I'm thinking about this so much as I have been the last few days. I don't think it's a coincidence, sir, is it?
No, it's interesting. A lot of the great emancipators of the 19th century, the 18th century, would not pass political muster. They wouldn't be politically correct today. That includes Abraham Lincoln, who signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which left 1 million slaves in bondage. And it includes George Washington, who was the founder of our country, who had slaves. And yet, Trish, if George Washington hadn't, they wanted him to be king. If he hadn't taken those first steps towards liberty and freedom, there would be no Barack Obama. There would be no America.
What I'm trying to say, and I want to get back to that because I think you have to put everything in a historical context. You know, because look, we judge people differently at different points in history. That said, what I'm saying is the fact that I've never thought about these statues before, Doug, what does that tell you? They are trying to drive a narrative. The left right now out there wanting to take down all of them. You know, the mayor of New York City establishing a commission to look at taking down Christopher Columbus. And I mean, you have to think, well, what is it that Christopher Columbus? I mean, that thing has been there since 1892, by the way, I would add. That's when they put it up in New York City. What did he do? Well, you know, we stole land from the Native Americans. I guess that's the thinking. So maybe this nation never should have been founded at all, if you go by that logic, right, Doug?
Right. And consider this, Trish, the United Kingdom eliminated slavery in 1833. So there should be mobs going into Westminster Abbey and pulling down the statues of the kings and queens of England. Slavery is a horrible criminal thing, but it is not Afrocentric. It's been throughout all history. Catherine the Great ruled over an empire of slaves. The term itself comes from the Slavs, which were about half the population of Europe, who were hauled off into slavery by 9th century Muslims.
It's part of our history, and granted, it's one of the worst parts of our history,
Terrible.
But it's part of our history. I guess what I'm troubled by, though, is where does this go, Doug? I mean, you know, everything suddenly now is somehow under attack.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Red Guard in China. It's mob rule.
I don't want to laugh about that. You know, I mean, mob rule. This is scary stuff.
It is. In Russia, there are some cities that have statues of Lenin that are up, and there's some local communities that have pulled them down. But when you said, where will it go, the Democrats have heroes like Margaret Sanger, who founded Planned Parenthood, who very racist, terrible things she wrote. Woodrow Wilson, whose son-in-law was in the Ku Klux Klan and led on the ballot at the Democrat National Convention in 1924 for president. You're right. Once you start pulling on the thread, the whole sweater's going to come unraveled.
Yeah, and you erase entirely our history, who we are as a nation, and that's wrong. We are, above all, Americans. Every single one of us, and all of these historical figures have that commonality.